All right, hello Honors 100. So for today's video lecture, I'm going to be focused mostly on introducing our creative nonfiction assignment. So this is the last major assignment for the class. We do still have a little bit of time before this is coming up. It's almost 2 weeks still before the due date for it. But obviously, I think that is time that it's worth beginning to think about it. Obviously, we had our research argument essays already due for the class. I've just started reading those over. Hope to have feedback to you about those within the next week or so. But now I want to set you up to start looking at our final assignment. So it's called the Creative Nonfiction Assignment. And what we're doing at this point is really taking a step away from the kinds of essays that we've been writing up to this point in the class, which have generally been mostly argumentative with a bit of analysis kind of embedded in there and some research in our most recent project. Now we're kind of switching gears to looking at more of a form of creative writing that's still going to take advantage of some of the tools that we've talked about in earlier parts of this class, but also kind of move things in a slightly different direction and give you an opportunity to do some more creative things. I'll talk about this a little bit more as we go along in some of our future classes, but we have seen some examples of creative nonfiction over the course of this class. And it's one of those things where there's a fuzzy line sometimes between what makes something that's a nonfiction piece creative nonfiction as opposed to just nonfiction. And some of that is subjective. But for example, the piece that I asked you all to read during our class time last time, the Verity Sales essay Dislocation, that's absolutely a pretty clear-cut example of creative nonfiction, right? Because it's rooted in her experience, but nonetheless, the tools that she's using, from kind of the fragmented story structure to the use of visuals, all of these pieces kind of make it not just a straightforward report of kind of what happened, right? It's obviously a creative expression of her experience and of things that she's thinking about in that context. So that would be a clear example. The Ta-Nehisi Coates piece that we read, the excerpt from his book Between the World and Me, I would suggest that that's also an example of creative nonfiction coming from a very different angle. The Wendy S. Walters piece that you'll read for next time, that I think would absolutely qualify as well. But it is a pretty open-ended form. And so this is where, for the other essays, I was really steering you towards a specific format where you had a clear thesis statement and body paragraphs of a roughly prescribed length and using topic sentences, all towards making a focused argument. The parameters are very different for this assignment. I'm almost inviting you to kind of unlearn everything that we talked about earlier in this semester. Obviously, keep those tools in your kit for future classes where most of your writing probably will be in that vein. But for this one, it's a little bit more playful in a way, a little bit more experimental in a way, and kind of open-ended in terms of how you want to take it. So I'm going to kind of go over the prompt here. The prompt is up on Canvas, so I do encourage you to follow along with that, or at least read it on your own. And to start brainstorming at least, because this is an assignment that I think it can be a relatively easy one if you want to look at it from that perspective. And I know you all are busy and have other classes that you're trying to take care of as well. But at the same time, I think it's also one that kind of rewards effort, where if you kind of put the effort in, not only will you probably do well on the assignment from a grading kind of perspective, but I expect you might also have some fun with it or get some meaningful reflection out of it. I think I've had a lot of students appreciate this assignment in the past. So with this assignment, I'm not going to read verbatim the whole prompt, but just to go over some of the key elements of it. So again, it's taking a step away from the argumentative essay, and we're using kind of some of those tools in a more creative way to kind of express yourself or to reflect on something. So some examples there are given here, and they're listed in bullet point form on the assignment prompt. You could, for example, do an essay that reflects on a very specific event or moment in your life, something that was important to you, something that maybe you want to unpack a little bit, or that's even just kind of joyful for you to return to, right? Or maybe that's sad for you to return to. That's also a way of approaching this. it could be an essay sort of meditating on a specific theme of interest, or something that's impacted your life at different points. So, for example, if you have a hobby or a genre of music, or an activity that you kind of participated in, a sport you played in high school, maybe any of that could be fair game to really kind of drill into why it's of interest to you, what it's kind of meant to you, and perhaps kind of intertwining the personal with kind of more worldly concerns in that regard. And along similar lines, it could be an examination of kind of a topic of interest to you that you could, write out scenes for. You could do more of a collage or list kind of structure. Again, similar to the Verity sales piece that I shared with you all, or other forms that really defy a traditional academic essay. So some other pieces here, I've seen students, for example, do some really visual things with this assignment. And images and special formatting can absolutely be a part of your presentation for this assignment. The length parameters for this assignment, let's see. Oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank here. I'll come back to that when I look at the grade guide here. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's 4 to 5 pages. Excuse me, 4 to 5 page assignment in this case. But so with that, I do welcome you to use kind of some more creative elements and kind of visual aspects that can absolutely count towards your length. So, for example, if you wanted to include illustrations with it, or kind of pose your essay in kind of a diagram sort of form. I had one student kind of experiment with flowcharts for an assignment like this in the past. Any of that is sort of fair game. So I am looking for the minimum equivalent of about 3 pages of actual written content. But otherwise, any sort of charts, diagrams, photos, illustrations, kind of special formatting to mirror what you're getting at is absolutely fair game, as long as you have roughly that amount of writing incorporated as well. Research is absolutely an option for this assignment. So if you do choose to incorporate research, please also plan on including an MLA formatted works cited page. That's not required. So if you're really focusing mostly on personal reflection or something that you just know a lot about and want to kind of do some riffing off of and kind of experimentation around, totally fair game. That wouldn't necessarily require any research. If you do want to just kind of explore a topic, and especially one that you aren't already really an expert on, I imagine that would probably require some research. So it's open-ended. You are welcome to include research, and that can be 1 source, 2 sources, 3, 4, 5. Kind of just, it really is going to depend on the project, whether research is appropriate, and if so, how many sources are appropriate. So pretty wide open in that regard. Especially because this assignment is so open-ended, right? And because you're able to use visual elements, I could imagine some people coming up with much shorter projects, at least in terms of word count and how much space they take on the page. Another opportunity you have with this assignment is to include what I'm calling a process memo. So if you wanted to do a shorter creative project, you can then also use up to a page or so of content as a process memo to basically explain what you were doing. And this is especially valid if you're not sure I'm going to get it, right? If you're doing something where, for example, you're mirroring social media in some way. I like to think I'm fairly up on pop culture and kind of on social media and things along those lines. But every time I say that, I realize how much I don't know because I'm getting older and I'm not completely as plugged in as I once was. And so especially if you're concerned I'm not going to get it, or if you're doing something really experimental that really no one other than yourself might entirely get, I welcome you to do a process memo with that, where you just spend a page basically discussing why you did it the way you did it, what the formatting choices were all about, why this was the most effective mode of communicating what you were trying to say, so on and so forth. So all of that, I hope, is fairly straightforward. Again, it's open-ended, but I hope the students will have some fun with that and do some creative things. If you're not sure if an idea really matches what the assignment's looking for, please feel free to email me or reach out if you'd like to try to schedule a phone call or a video chat in some format. I haven't done very much of that since we transitioned online, but it is an option I absolutely want to make available. I know some students have an easier time kind of processing information that way. If we can find a mutually workable time, I'm happy to do that with students as well. But okay, so with all of that though, one other piece that I wanted to address is an opportunity for extra credit here with this assignment. So with this assignment, I'm giving you the opportunity to share your work with the class. So if we were still meeting in person, what this would look like is I would give you the option to actually just read a page of your work aloud. I would project it on the screen and ask you to read it aloud and kind of discuss some of what your choices were and so on and so forth. Because we're not meeting in person, the way that I'm going to do that instead is give you an option to share an extra page of this with me that you kind of hand select. It can just be the first page of your piece, or it can be a page that you're especially proud of, or kind of however you want to approach that. And then record either a video or an audio recording of you reading that part aloud, and again, discussing a little bit about the broader context of what you're writing or what your creative approach was here, or so on and so forth. And with that, if you do choose to do that, I will be prepared to add some additional credit to your assignment. The assignment will still max out at the 15 points prescribed for the assignment, but for example, if you were going to get a 13 or a 14 out of 15, if you were to share your work with the class, you could see your score automatically bumped up all the way to maximum credit of 15. I do this to be transparent because I think that on one hand, it's beneficial for the class because students tend to do such different and kind of creative things with this assignment. I think it's a shame if only I get to see that, right? And so by the same token, I don't want to require students to share this because some of these projects do get pretty personal, and if you don't really want to share it with the class, I'm not going to mandate that you do, but I'm going to gently encourage you to share your work. So that's where that extra credit opportunity gets in, and I lay out more specifics about that in the prompt itself. So with all that, so yeah, I encourage you to read over the prompt, come to me with questions. I'll certainly talk about this some more in a couple of our upcoming video lectures, but again, it is kind of as open-ended as it sounds, and so there's definitely a lot of room for you to kind of play with this, excuse me, and make it your own. Okay, so with all that said, the other pieces I'm going to hit on, so as I alluded to for today's class, I was sort of anticipating that we wouldn't have an in-person class, and obviously we're not having an in-person class, but we are now all online. And so what I'm going to do, which I think will be hopefully relatively easy and hopefully fun for the class, I'm posting 2 additional videos in this discussion thread. And I welcome you. I encourage you to watch both of them. I know some students are really pressed for time, in which case you can choose just one of them. And then we're just going to do kind of just a standard kind of just analysis of what's going on in this video, what's interesting, what's compelling about it, what's confusing about it, whether we sort of think that it works, so to speak. So the 2 videos I'm going to post are very different. I think each has kind of different appealing factors about it. And again, I encourage you to watch both if you do have the time to do so. One is a political ad for a congresswoman named Sharice Edwards. She was running for Congress in Kansas, and she generated this 1-minute video ad. So I imagine it might be of less interest from a content perspective, at least the way I'm selling it, than the other video that I'm going to discuss in a moment, but it is only about 1 minute long. So it is a much shorter video, and I think it's especially interesting to consider her rhetorical choices here, right? Just to kind of give you some preview here. Again, she's running for Congress. She's running as a Democrat. She never mentions any of her opponents, who she's actually running against, but she does make pretty explicit mention of Donald Trump. And I'm not going to cast any political views any which way on this, but I think it is interesting that she casts Trump as her opponent in this case and not the people she's actually running against. And I think it's interesting to consider why she makes that choice and whether it's effective or not. And I will say, this is an ad from 2018. She did win the election she was running in. So whether it was the ad or whether it was her broader campaign or who she is as a person, it did work to some extent, right? So we can't say it was a complete failure regardless. But I think it's a very unconventional political ad, and I think you'll see what I mean as soon as you start watching it. The other video that I'm sharing is one that Nicholas from our class had suggested that I was planning to use it in a class session, basically whenever we kind of ran short on discussion time and needed an extra video to kind of do some analytical practice around. Obviously, everything changed pretty dramatically since then, so we haven't been in person, but I thought this was a really good opportunity to share this video because I think it is certainly an interesting one. So it's by the band BTS, who I know a number of people in class have expressed that they like in the past, or at least have strong opinions on whether they're positive or negative. So I'm sharing that video as well. That's the one that I suspect might not be as palatable in terms of length, because it's I think about a 6-minute video, but might be more fun for some folks as well. So again, if you have the time, please check out both of them. If you don't have time, you can select just one of them. But please do chime in the discussion thread with kind of just your thoughts, your responses to one or both of the videos. And also, please feel free to weigh in there with any questions you might have in regards to this creative nonfiction assignment. All right. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll catch you next time.